when you're up against a struggle that shatters all your dreams, and your hopes have been cruelly crushed by Satan's manifested scheme, and you feel the urge within you to submit to earthly fears. Don't let the faith you're standing in seem to disappear. Praise the Lord.
It's a joy to be here tonight, not just because of the children, but just to see all the people who are interested in the subject matter which Diane's book covers. I've known Diane for quite a while. In fact, I think I've published 3 or 4 of her books, and I'm embarrassed that I can't remember, but Diane has helped me with a couple of others. So when I introduced Diane, I know that A, she is a lady of great skill, high integrity, and when she did this book was a little bit different for her. Diane just didn't pour her skills into this book. She was the one who experienced some of this content. And I can remember, Diane, when I read your book, and I was nervous. I thought, I don't know if I want to publish this book. It's a little heavy. And but I came from a background where I was part of our family had this problem with this abuse, sexual abuse within the family. And when I read it, the thing that hit me was, if the book never makes a penny, it doesn't matter. What matters is that people gain experience and learn from what Diane has uncovered, what she experienced. And she has gone to great extents to bring in stats, experiences. She has things in here that will warn people about the hidden part of this whole predator problem that we have that is not at a low level in our society. Diane has written with all the skill, with all the heart and all the truth that comes from her life. And that's why helping her to get this book into the hands of people who need to read it and need to learn from it was an easy decision. Diane, I want to thank you for being part of this, because there are only a few books, when you publish books, that you say, one day this book is going to be a book that's going to change lives. It's going to help somebody. And when I was watching the kids dancing tonight, I was thinking, can you imagine if someone takes their vulnerability, their weakness, their innocence, and exploits it? And there's something about it that is it's not sorrowful. It's beyond that. It seems like unforgivable. We know the Lord can do all things. So it's a privilege to be involved tonight, Diane, with the launch of your book, the public launch of your book, because we've had it out for a little while, and I know already we're getting responses from it, and I'm excited to say that it's in all the bookstores, and the ebook is coming out in about another 3 or 4 weeks, so you'll be able to get it in e-format if you can't get it in hardcover. I highly recommend the book. It'll change your life when you read it. It'll expose you to some of the things that people are fighting, and people like Melody. People like Diane, and what she's doing is very brave, because I would not have the nerve to put in a book what you did. But I'm so glad you did, Diane. And so we've asked Diane if she would maybe say a few words or read a little section from the book so you have an idea of what's in it. And the book will be available tonight. So Diane, thank you very much for writing this book.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Melody, and thank you, choir. That was amazing, and thank you all for coming. We just so appreciate you coming after a long day. In 2006, my family was shattered from issues of child sexual abuse. It was absolutely devastating, and at that time, I had the choice of either hiding away in shame what had happened in our family, or taking the insights that I had gained in such a difficult way, making them available to other people for the protection of their families. and I chose the latter. It's one thing to be able to identify a predator. I did a lot of research in that area, but identifying a predator means that someone has already been abused. And the best thing is to be able to prevent any abuse from happening in the first place. And I thought, well, how can that happen? How can no one be abused? Well, if there were no abusers, no one would be abused. And so it's with that in mind that I've chosen the excerpt that I'm about to read. It's brief. And this section is called, Are You Raising a Child Molester? Every child molester was raised by someone. Sick people who molest children don't just suddenly appear, having stepped off the GO train from Mars. They're born into people groups, usually families, who are expected to guide them into healthy adulthood. Parents and guardians have more of a shot of preventing the development of another predator than any politician, teacher, or social worker. The home can be the germinating environment for either a healthy son or daughter or a pedophile. Force yourself to imagine walking down a long concrete hall one day, pushing a buzzer at a door, entering a room lined with windowed stalls equipped with telephone receivers, and seeing your son or your daughter in an orange jumpsuit on the other side of a window, waiting to talk to you via one of the receivers. All your early hopes and early dreams for your child die right there as you are smacked hard by a smirking reality. Totally at the mercy of the guards and other inmates in a world that doesn't care what kind of a big shot you are or what kind of a home he comes from, your child hangs his head on the other side of the glass, the embodiment of all the efforts, money, and time you have or have not poured into him. You stare at him, remembering all the violent, sex-laced video games you allowed him to play. A scene of lifelike figures gang-raping a female on his monitor snaps across your mind. You remember the hours he spent alone at his computer while you zoned out in front of the television after a long day at the office. You remember the first time he found your stash of porn and how embarrassed you were at his questions. You knew he didn't like himself very much, but you thought his aggressive behavior with younger children would fix itself. You remember the first time you discovered that he was logging on to porn sites, and you wish now you'd taken the time to figure out what to say to him about it. With shame, you remember the way you and your ex used to fight in front of him and the looks you saw on his face. You remember all those times you closed the door behind you off to another social event while your child was left to his or her own devices. Until faced with it in our own homes, we think of sex offenders as anonymous faces splashed across the daily news. We suppose that they were raised in some shapeless void from which they simply emerged as fully ripened predators. The reality is, the child molesters are all born as sweet little babies. Their lives are blank slates upon which we as parents and guardians get to write. While some circumstances are beyond our control, the essential truth is that the more diligently we parent, the more details of our children's lives we address, the more accountability we require, the more positive goals and purposes we establish with our children, the more time we spend, the more we show them how important they are to us, the less likelihood we have of hearing the awful news one day that they have sexually assaulted someone. The less likelihood we have of having to walk down that long, lonely corridor. As parents, we have a choice. We can bring cute little babies into the world and spend 18 detailed years focusing on building enjoyable children who will contribute to life, or We can bring cute little babies into the world and leave them to their own devices while we do our own thing, and then spend the rest of our lives in misery wishing we could redo those critical 18 years. My message is that pornography is not just junk food for perverts. It's the main diet for people who molest children. We can make a huge change in this world by doing everything possible in our own corners of the world to eliminate it. I'm not naive. I know there'll always be pornography, but maybe our efforts will stop one teenager from viewing it. One teenager who would otherwise have eventually molested one child. The whole world for that one protected child would be a different world.